What if I told you that beneath the lush jungles, towering pyramids, and windswept ruins of the Americas lie secrets so baffling, they defy everything we think we know about ancient civilizations? Picture this: centuries before European explorers set foot on these shores, vast empires rose and fell, leaving behind monuments that still whisper their mysteries to us today. Places like Machu Picchu, perched impossibly high in the Andes, or Teotihuacan with its sprawling avenue of the dead, weren't just cities. They were living puzzles designed with precision that rivals our modern engineering. Yet, despite decades of research, we've barely scratched the surface of their true purpose. Think about that for a moment. These weren't just random settlements. They were masterpieces of astronomy, architecture, and culture, built by people whose names we don't even know. How did the Maya calculate celestial movements with jaw-dropping accuracy without telescopes? Why did the builders of Cahokia, North America's forgotten metropolis, abandon their city almost overnight? And what compelled ancient cultures from Peru to the Mississippi to construct earthworks so massive they can only be fully appreciated from the sky? The more we uncover, the more questions we're left with, each mystery pulling us deeper into a world that feels equal parts familiar and utterly alien. This isn't just a tour of ruins or a dry history lesson. This is a journey into the heart of what makes us human, our relentless curiosity, our drive to leave a mark, and the echoes of those who came before us. Over the next 25 revelations, we'll piece together clues hidden in stone, soil, and legend, from the enigma of the Nazca Lines to the haunting disappearance of the ancestral pueblones. Some of these stories will challenge what you've been taught, others might send chills down your spine, but one thing's certain: by the end, you'll never look at the ancient Americas the same way again. So let's begin where all great mysteries start, not with answers, but with wonder. High above the scorching Peruvian desert, etched into the earth like some colossal artist's sketchbook, the Nazca Lines stretch for miles, a gallery of geometric shapes, towering animals, and puzzling figures so vast they can only be seen in their entirety from the sky. Who crafted these intricate designs, and why would they create art meant for eyes they could never look through? This isn't just ancient graffiti, it's one of archaeology's most enduring riddles. Take the hummingbird, its wingspan stretching over 300 feet, or the spider, its legs perfectly proportioned as if drawn by a mathematician. These aren't rough sketches, they're precise, almost surgical in their execution. The creators scraped away the dark, iron-rich topsoil to reveal the lighter sand beneath, a technique that preserved the lines for over 2,000 years. But here's the twist: the Nazca people had no hot air balloons, no drones, no way to see their work from above. So how did they plot these designs with such accuracy? Some researchers point to simple tools, ropes, stakes, and an intimate knowledge of the terrain. Others whisper of lost technologies or even celestial guidance, as if the stars themselves whispered coordinates to the artisans below. Then there's the bigger question: why were these sacred pathways for gods to walk among mortals? A massive astronomical calendar locking solstices and equinoxes into the earth. Or perhaps something more unsettling, like landing strips for entities beyond our understanding. The truth might lie in the Nazca's water worship. In one of the driest places on Earth, the lines often align with underground aquifers, hinting at a desperate dialogue with the elements. But why choose symbols only visible from the heavens to beg for rain? The mystery deepens when you realize the Nazca weren't alone in this practice. From Bolivia's Sajama lines to the ancient horse figures carved into England's hills, cultures across the world felt compelled to leave giant marks on the land. It's as if humanity shared an unspoken urge to say we were here, not just to neighbors but to something far greater. The Nazca Lines might be the boldest statement of all, a message in a bottle we're still struggling to read. And that's the thrill of it. Every theory cracks open another door, each answer spiraling into 3 new questions. These desert etchings aren't just relics, they're a conversation across centuries waiting for us to listen. One of history's greatest vanishing acts unfolded in the heart of the Maya world. Around the 9th century, at the height of their sophistication, when cities like Tikal and Palenque boasted towering pyramids, bustling markets, and intricate calendars, something went terribly wrong. The Maya didn't just fade away, their grand urban centers were abandoned with eerie haste. Stelae covered in glyphs abruptly stopped recording victories, temples stood half-finished, and royal palaces were left to the jungle. This wasn't a slow decline, it was a civilization stepping offstage mid-performance. So what happened? The theories are as tangled as the vines reclaiming those empty cities. One compelling suspect, drought. Tree rings from the region reveal a prolonged period of devastating dryness, peaking right when the collapse accelerated. Imagine crops withering, reservoirs evaporating, and a society built on maize suddenly unable to feed itself. The Maya had weathered dry spells before, but this was different, a perfect storm of environmental stress. Yet drought alone doesn't explain why some cities fell while others, like Chichen Itza in the north, thrived for centuries longer. Then there's the shadow of war. In the final years, glyphs tell of escalating conflicts, not just between kingdoms but within them. Mass graves found near city walls suggest sieges and violence on a scale never seen before. Carvings depict kings being dragged through the streets, their divine authority crumbling along with the social order. It's as if the very glue holding Maya society together dissolved: loyalty to rulers, faith in rituals, even trust among neighbors. But here's the twist: the Maya didn't vanish. Millions of their descendants still live across Central America today. What disappeared was the political system, the elite class, the drive to build monuments. The people adapted, scattering into smaller communities, trading stone cities for resilience. Their story isn't one of extinction, but transformation, a reminder that civilizations don't always end. Sometimes they simply change shape, leaving ruins as riddles for us to unravel. Buried deep in the swampy lowlands of Mexico's Gulf Coast, 17 stone faces stare silently across the centuries, each one a towering monument to a civilization so ancient, even the Maya called them the mother culture. The Olmec colossal heads, some weighing over 20 tons, are more than just sculptures. They're a portrait of power carved in basalt, with thick lips, flattened noses, and helmets that hint at a society obsessed with identity and authority. But here's what chills the spine. These heads were hauled from quarries over 50 miles away, through jungles and rivers, by a people who hadn't yet invented the wheel. The first question isn't just who these faces represent, but how they got here. The Olmecs left no blueprints, no manuals, just the heads themselves, abandoned like puzzle pieces in the dirt. Modern experiments show moving even a single head would require hundreds of laborers, log rollers, and rope made from local fibers. Some theorists suggest they used rafts along coastal waterways, but the nearest quarry sits in the Tuxtla Mountains, an area riddled with rapids and waterfalls. Others propose the Olmecs might have leveraged seasonal floods, floating the stones during heavy rains. Yet every explanation feels like grasping at shadows, because the truth is, we still don't know. Then there's the deeper mystery: why carve these faces at all? Some heads wear what look like athletic helmets, sparking debates about whether they depict ball players from a ritual sport. Others bear markings resembling jaguar pelts, a sacred symbol of divine kingship. The most haunting theory: these might be portraits of actual rulers, immortalized in stone to project their authority across time. But if that's true, why are so many heads found buried or deliberately damaged, as if someone wanted to erase their memory? The Olmecs vanished long before Europeans arrived, leaving no written records, only these silent sentinels. And that's the magic of them: they refuse to be ignored. In a world obsessed with speed and noise, the colossal heads endure as a reminder that some questions can't be answered, only wondered at. They challenge us to admit how little we truly understand about the people who shaped the Americas long before history books began. At the center of Chichen Itza, a pyramid rises with mathematical perfection, not just as a monument but as a machine. El Castillo, the so-called Temple of Kukulkan, isn't merely a stack of stone. It's a celestial clock, an echo chamber, and possibly a bridge between worlds. Every equinox, as the sun sets, a shadow slithers down the northern staircase, a serpent of light and dark that appears to bring the feathered god Kukulkan to life. But this spectacle is just the beginning of the pyramid's secrets. Start with the numbers. The structure has 4 sides, each with 91 steps. Add the top platform, and you get 365, one step for every day of the solar year. The Maya didn't just build a temple, they encoded time itself into the architecture. Even more astonishing, the pyramid sits atop a cenote, a sinkhole filled with water considered sacred to the Maya. Some researchers believe the entire site was carefully chosen to align with underground rivers, turning El Castillo into a symbolic axis between heaven, earth, and the underworld. Then there's the sound. Clap your hands at the base of the stairs, and the echo doesn't just bounce back, it chirps like the cry of the Quetzal, a sacred bird linked to Kukulkan. Stand at the top and whisper, and your voice carries with unnatural clarity to the plaza below. These aren't accidents, they're acoustic engineering feats that suggest rituals here weren't just seen, but heard in ways that must have felt supernatural. Was this a deliberate trick to amplify the power of priests, making their voices seem godlike? Or was there something deeper, a belief that sound could summon cosmic forces? The debate over El Castillo's true purpose splits scholars. Some argue it was primarily a temple where rulers performed bloodletting ceremonies to commune with deities. Others see it as a giant observatory, its corners aligned to track Venus's movements, a planet the Maya associated with war and rebirth. But perhaps the most compelling idea is that it was never either-or. For the Maya, science and spirituality weren't separate. A calendar was a sacred text. A pyramid wasn't just a building, it was a living dialogue with the universe. What makes El Castillo so mesmerizing isn't just its precision, but its ambiguity. Even today, as thousands gather to watch the equinox serpent descend, we're left wondering, was this the Maya's ultimate act of devotion, their grandest scientific achievement, or a message we've yet to fully decipher? The pyramid refuses to be pinned down, standing instead as a silent challenge, reminding us that some ancient wonders weren't meant to have just one meaning, but many. Beneath the towering pyramids of Teotihuacan, hidden from the sun for centuries, lies a labyrinth that rewrites our understanding of the city of the gods. In 2008, archaeologists made a staggering discovery, a tunnel stretching nearly 400 feet under the feathered serpent pyramid, its walls shimmering with powdered pyrite to mimic the night sky. This wasn't just a passageway, it was a recreation of the underworld itself, a sacred pathway where rulers might have communed with ancestors and gods. The tunnel's design is an architectural marvel. At its entrance, workers found a miniature landscape, tiny mountains carved from jade, pools of liquid mercury representing lakes, even specks of iron mimicking meteorites. These weren't random offerings, they were a map of the cosmos in 3 dimensions. The deeper the tunnel went, the more surreal it became. At its heart lay chambers filled with thousands of artifacts, jaguar skeletons, obsidian blades, even seashells from distant coasts, all arranged with ritual precision. But here's what's chilling. Many objects were deliberately broken, as if their power could only be released through destruction. What does it all mean? Some scholars believe the tunnel was a physical manifestation of Mictlan, the Aztec underworld, though Teotihuacan predates the Aztecs by centuries. Others argue it served as a symbolic womb, where rulers underwent spiritual rebirth before emerging to lead their people. Then there's the mercury. This liquid metal, so rare in ancient Mesoamerica, would have pooled like a shimmering mirror, a substance the Maya associated with portals to other realms. Was this tunnel a machine for conjuring visions, a throne room for the dead? The most haunting clue might be the absence of human remains. Unlike Egyptian tombs or European crypts, this underworld wasn't built for the dead but for the living. Those who entered, perhaps priests or kings, weren't meant to stay. They walked among these wonders, then returned to the surface, carrying secrets we can only guess at. Teotihuacan's builders left no written records, but their tunnel whispers one thing clearly. For them, the boundary between worlds wasn't a wall, it was a door. And we've only just found the key. High in the Andes, where the air thins and the mountains scrape the sky, the Inca crafted stonework so precise it defies logic. At Sacsayhuaman, a fortress overlooking Cusco, granite blocks weighing up to 200 tons fit together like pieces of an impossible jigsaw. No mortar, no gaps, not even room to slide a razor blade between them. These aren't just walls, they're masterclasses in engineering, built to withstand earthquakes that topple modern buildings. And the wildest part, the Inca achieved this without iron tools, without the wheel, without even a written language to blueprint their designs. So how did they do it? One theory points to their reverence for stone itself. The Inca believed rocks could soften or even move at command when soaked in a mythical plant juice. While that sounds like legend, there's a fascinating grain of truth. Geologists note certain lichens secrete acids that might have helped subtly shape surfaces. Others argue the Inca used a trial and error method, grinding stones against each other for months until the fit was perfect. At Ollantaytambo, you can see knobs left on unfinished blocks, likely handles for laborers to adjust positioning millimeter by millimeter. Then there's the polygonal puzzle. Unlike Egyptian straight-cut blocks, Inca masonry often used irregular shapes with up to 12 sides. This wasn't just artistic flair. Interlocking angles distributed seismic force like a shock absorber, allowing walls to sway during quakes instead of crumbling. Some corners curve inward slightly, a technique modern engineers call batter, which strengthens structures against wind and tremors. It's as if the Inca coded earthquake resistance into every stone. But the biggest mystery isn't the how, it's the why. Why spend generations perfecting joints invisible to the naked eye? For the Inca, perfection was spiritual. Stones weren't inert, they held kame, a living essence. A well-fitted wall wasn't just stable, it was alive, harmonizing with the earth's energy. Some scholars suggest the masonry mirrored the surrounding mountains, turning cities into reflections of the sacred landscape. Others point to political theater. Flawless construction proclaimed the ruler's divine right to reshape the world itself. The irony, this precision became their undoing. When the Spanish arrived, they marveled at the stonework but couldn't replicate it. Colonial churches built atop Inca foundations often collapsed in quakes, while the original walls stood unshaken. Today, as lasers scan these seams, we're left with more questions than answers. Maybe the truth lies somewhere between science and spirit, a reminder that the Inca didn't just build walls. They whispered to stone, and centuries later, those stones still whisper back. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, where vines strangle ancient trees and rivers carve through uncharted valleys, explorers have whispered about a city of gold for centuries. The legends speak of Paititi, a refuge built by the Inca as their empire crumbled under Spanish conquest, a place so rich, its temples were said to be sheathed in gold, its streets paved with jewels. Conquistadors scoured mountains and jungles for it, driven mad by rumors. Even today, treasure hunters and archaeologists clash over whether Paititi is myth, mirage, or a metropolis waiting to be found. The story begins with the fall of the Inca. In 1532, as Francisco Pizarro's forces closed in on Cusco, the last Inca emperor, Manco Inca, fled into the wilderness with a remnant of his court. Spanish chronicles describe his followers carrying unimaginable wealth into the jungle, golden idols, sacred vessels, even the empire's legendary golden sun disk. Somewhere in the tangled green vastness between Peru and Bolivia, They supposedly built a new capital, a hidden fortress city where Inca traditions could survive. Indigenous oral histories add eerie details. Paititi wasn't just a physical place, but a spiritual sanctuary guarded by shamans who could fold the landscape to hide it from outsiders. Modern expeditions have turned up tantalizing clues. In 2001, Italian archaeologist Mario Poglia discovered a 17th-century Jesuit manuscript in the Vatican archives describing a golden city in the Peruvian Amazon, coordinates included. Satellite imagery has revealed strange geometric formations near the Brazilian border, while LiDAR scans in recent years exposed what might be terraces and pyramids beneath the canopy. The most compelling evidence comes from the indigenous Machu people, who speak of ruins deep in the Megantoni sanctuary, a protected zone so remote even they rarely venture there. Yet skeptics argue Paititi is a colonial fantasy, a South American El Dorado that never existed. After all, the Amazon's acidic soil devours organic material, making it unlikely grand stone cities survived. Others counter that the Inca weren't just mountain dwellers, they traded with Amazonian tribes and may have built outposts in the rainforest. Some researchers propose a middle ground. Paititi wasn't a single golden metropolis, but a network of hidden settlements where Inca refugees blended with local cultures. The truth may lie in a twist no one expected. In 2016, a team scanning the Mosquitia region of Honduras, another rumored lost city zone, stumbled upon something extraordinary, not just ruins, but an entire civilization untouched by archaeology. If the dense jungles of Central America could hide a culture until the 21st century, what might still lurk in the Amazon? Paititi's allure isn't just about gold. It's about the humility of realizing how much history remains written in soil and stone, waiting for the right moment to be read. At 22,000 feet above sea level, where the air is too thin to breathe and the cold bites through layers of clothing, 3 children slept for 500 years. On the summit of Mount Llullaillaco, a volcano straddling the Argentina-Chile border, archaeologists made a discovery in 1999 that rewrote our understanding of Inca sacrifice: the perfectly preserved bodies of a 15-year-old girl, a 7-year-old boy, and a 6-year-old girl, their skin intact, their hair braided, their faces so peaceful they might have dozed off yesterday. These weren't victims of tragedy, they were honored offerings chosen for a ritual so sacred it defies modern comprehension. The Llullaillaco mummies are the best preserved human remains ever found, frozen in time by the mountain's eternal frost. The maiden, as the eldest is called, still wears a feathered headdress and a burgundy tunic woven with geometric precision. Beside her, the lightning girl shows signs of being struck by a sudden electrical discharge after death, her clothing scorched, her body oddly contorted, as if the mountain itself claimed her. The boy, dubbed El Niño, sits cross-legged, his fingers clutching tiny pouches of coca leaves, his expression serene. But their preservation isn't the real mystery. It's why they were here at all. Inca child sacrifices, or capacocha, weren't acts of cruelty but ceremonies of cosmic balance. These children weren't snatched from their homes, they were selected years in advance, their lives transformed into a sacred journey. Forensic analysis reveals their diets changed months before death, shifted to elite foods like maize and llama meat, laced with alcohol and coca to ease their final hours. They were dressed in fine textiles, their hair meticulously braided with cords that took days to weave. Every detail suggests these were celebratory offerings, not punishments, a gift to the gods in exchange for fertile crops, healthy empires, or favorable weather. The mountain's role is equally fascinating. Llullaillaco wasn't just high, it was alive, a pu or divine being in Inca belief. By placing the children on its summit, the Inca forged a direct link between earth and sky, humanity and the divine. Modern climbers describe the ascent as brutal, a weeks-long trek through blistering winds and deadly altitude sickness. Yet the Inca carried these children, along with ritual goods like gold statues and spondylus shells, to heights even modern gear struggles to reach. Perhaps the most haunting detail is the maiden's final meal. Residue in her stomach contained chicha, a fermented corn beer, and traces of coca substances that would have dulled pain and induced drowsiness. She didn't die fighting or crying. She slipped into eternal sleep as the cold took her. For the Inca, this wasn't an end, but a transformation. These children became messengers, intermediaries between worlds, their bodies preserved as perfectly as their spirits were believed to be. Today, the mummies rest in a climate-controlled museum, their story a collision of reverence and scientific curiosity. They force us to confront a civilization that saw death not as an ending, but as a sacred continuum. In their frozen faces, we don't just see the past, we see a philosophy that measured life's value not in years, but in purpose. And that may be the greatest mystery of all, how a culture we call ancient understood sacrifice in ways we're still struggling to comprehend. Buried in the backrooms of museums and private collections around the world, the crystal skulls stare back with hollow eyes, objects so perfectly carved, they seem to defy the capabilities of ancient artisans. From the moment they surfaced in the late 19th century, these translucent relics sparked wild theories. Were they Aztec or Maya artifacts imbued with mystic powers? Tools for interdimensional communication, or simply elaborate hoaxes designed to cash in on humanity's thirst for the unexplainable? The most famous of these, the Mitchell Hedges skull, is a marvel of craftsmanship. Carved from a single block of clear quartz, it features a detachable jawbone with hinges so precise they suggest advanced lapidary techniques. Its surface lacks any visible tool marks, leading some to claim it was polished over generations or even shaped by lost technologies. But here's the catch. No crystal skull has ever been excavated by archaeologists in a documented dig. Nearly all appeared mysteriously in European antique shops during the late 1800s, a time when Mesoamerican artifacts fetched high prices from collectors hungry for exotic curiosities. Science has since cast doubt on their ancient origins. Microscopic analysis reveals marks left by rotary wheels, tools the Maya and Aztec didn't possess. Geological studies trace the quartz to sources in Madagascar and Brazil, far from Mesoamerica's trade routes. Even the Mitchell Hedges skull, long championed as genuine, was likely crafted in Germany between 1867 and 1880. Its discovery in Belize later debunked as an elaborate family fabrication. Yet the skulls refuse to fade into obscurity. Indigenous oral traditions across the Americas speak of crystalline objects used for healing or divination, fueling speculation that some authentic skulls might exist undiscovered. Modern crystal workers still attribute supernatural properties to replicas, claiming they emit energy or store ancestral knowledge. And let's face it, their eerie beauty taps into something primal. A perfect skull, after all, is more than an art object. It's a universal memento mori, a bridge between the material and the spiritual. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't where the skulls came from, but why we wanted them to be real so badly. They're mirrors reflecting our own desires, to believe in lost civilizations with impossible technology, in artifacts that hold esoteric truths. The crystal skulls may not be ancient, but their legacy is undeniable, proof that sometimes the most powerful magic is the story itself. Deep in the heart of the Amazon, where the soil is so nutrient-poor that farmers struggle to grow crops for more than a few seasons, patches of jet-black earth defy everything we know about the rainforest. Terra preta Portuguese for black earth isn't just fertile, it's unnaturally so, packed with charcoal, broken pottery, and organic matter that make it up to 3 times more productive than surrounding soils. What's baffling isn't just its richness, but its endurance. This soil has remained fertile for thousands of years, long after the civilization that created it vanished. Were these plots accidental leftovers or proof of an advanced agricultural society that mastered the jungle long before Europeans arrived? the secret lies in the recipe. Terra preta isn't natural, it's engineered. Microscopic analysis reveals layers of charcoal, fish bones, manure, and ceramic shards, all carefully mixed into a compost-like blend. The charcoal, or biochar, acts like a sponge, locking in nutrients and moisture while hosting microbes that keep the soil alive. But here's the twist: modern scientists are only now replicating this ancient technique as a solution to climate change and soil depletion. The Amazon's ancestors didn't just farm, they transformed the earth itself, creating a self-renewing system that still outperforms our best fertilizers today. So who were these master gardeners? For decades, historians dismissed the Amazon as a green desert, incapable of sustaining large populations, but Terra Preta tells a different story. Satellite imagery and ground surveys reveal these patches aren't random. They form grids spanning hundreds of miles, often clustered around riverbanks where settlements would thrive. Some estimates suggest Terra Preta covers up to 10% of the Amazon basin, hinting at a population that could have numbered in the millions before European diseases decimated them. The most tantalizing clue comes from the pottery fragments mixed into the soil. Unlike typical farm waste, these aren't broken tools. They're ornate, decorated with intricate patterns that suggest ritual use. Were these pots part of ceremonies to bless the earth, or evidence that Terra Preta's creators saw agriculture as something sacred, a partnership with the land rather than domination? Indigenous tribes like the Guaycurú still use similar techniques today, calling it bringing the soil to life, a tradition passed down through generations, though the original architects remain nameless. Critics argue Terra Preta could be accidental, the result of centuries of village waste piling up, but the scale and uniformity of these patches suggest something more deliberate. In the Xingu region, Terra Preta forms perfect circles too precise for random accumulation. Some researchers propose these were garden cities, where vast orchards and crops fed urban centers now swallowed by jungle. LiDAR scans in recent years have uncovered networks of roads and plazas beneath the canopy, reinforcing the idea of a lost civilization that designed its ecosystem. What makes Terra Preta so revolutionary isn't just its existence, but its implications. If the Amazon was once a managed landscape teeming with cities and farms, what does that mean for our view of untouched wilderness? And if these ancient people could turn barren soil into a breadbasket without destroying their environment, what lessons might they hold for our own fight against deforestation and climate change? The Black Earth isn't just dirt, it's a message from the past waiting for us to dig deeper. Across the Mississippi River from modern-day St. Louis, a sprawling complex of earthen mounds rises from the Illinois floodplain, the last remnants of a city that once rivaled London in size. At its peak around 1100 AD, Cahokia boasted a population of 20,000 people, a grand central plaza larger than 30 football fields, and a towering four-tiered mound that still stands 100 feet tall. This wasn't just a village, it was the beating heart of North America's most sophisticated pre-Columbian civilization. Yet by the 1400s, the streets stood empty, the great wooden palisade crumbled, and the people who built it vanished without written records. Who were they, and why did they abandon their masterpiece? The scale of Cahokia staggers the imagination. Workers moved 55 million cubic feet of earth by hand, enough to fill 45,000 Olympic swimming pools, hauling basketfuls of soil one at a time to construct over 120 mounds. Some served as burial sites for elite leaders, their graves filled with exotic goods like seashells from the Gulf Coast and copper from the Great Lakes. Others aligned with celestial events like the Woodhenge, a circle of red cedar posts that marked solstices and equinoxes with eerie precision. But the grandest of all, Monk's Mound, covered 14 acres at its base, a man-made mountain with a summit that overlooked a city of thatched roof houses, bustling markets, and ritual games that drew pilgrims from across the continent. Then came the collapse. Soil samples tell a grim story. Around 1200 AD, Cahokia's forests had been stripped bare, its topsoil eroded by overfarming. Tree rings reveal a devastating drought around 1300, followed by catastrophic floods. But environmental stress alone doesn't explain the exodus. Archaeological digs uncovered chilling clues, mass graves from what might have been ritual sacrifices, evidence of malnutrition in children's bones, and a final, desperate expansion of the city's defensive walls. Was it civil war, famine, or something more unsettling, like a spiritual crisis that made Cahokia's people question the very gods who once blessed them? The identity of Cahokia's builders deepens the puzzle. Unlike the Maya or Inca, they left no written language. Their descendants might include modern tribes like the Osage or Quapaw, but oral histories offer only fragments. Some scholars argue Cahokia was a multicultural hub, drawing diverse groups who created a new society together, a kind of ancient American melting pot. Others point to sudden shifts in art and architecture around 1050 AD, suggesting a charismatic leader, perhaps even a stranger from afar, who sparked the city's golden age. One haunting theory connects Cahokia to the Southern Cult, a mysterious religious movement marked by ritual objects depicting weeping eyes, skulls, and winged serpent symbols that spread across the southeast around the same time Cahokia fell. What lingers most isn't just the mystery of Cahokia's fall, but the echoes of its ambition. This was a place where people reshaped the land not for conquest, but for community, where celestial cycles and human lives intertwined in mounds that still take your breath away. As archaeologists sift through the soil, they're not just uncovering a lost city, they're rediscovering a vision of what North America could have been, long before European sails appeared on the horizon. The mounds stand as silent witnesses, asking us to consider what makes a civilization truly great and why do some flourish only to fade into the earth. Long before European ships crossed the Pacific, an ancient seafaring people achieved the impossible, sailing thousands of miles across open ocean to reach the Americas. The Polynesians, masters of celestial navigation, may have touched South America's shores centuries before Columbus, leaving behind clues that rewrite history. Take the humble sweet potato, a staple crop across Polynesia. Its genetic fingerprint traces back to South America, with carbon-dated remains in the Cook Islands appearing by the year 1000. How did this tuber cross the world's largest ocean without human help? Then there are the chickens, or rather, their bones. In Chile, archaeologists uncovered pre-Columbian chicken remains dating to the 1400s, long before Spanish conquistadors arrived. But these weren't just any chickens. Their DNA matched birds from Polynesia, not Europe. Even more telling, digging deeper revealed something extraordinary: chicken coops built in classic Polynesian style, with distinct ventilation systems still used in the Pacific today. These weren't stray birds blown off course, they were deliberate transplants brought across the sea by someone who knew exactly where they were going. The strongest evidence comes from the waves themselves. Polynesian double-hulled canoes, or wakolua, weren't primitive rafts. They were ocean-going vessels capable of carrying dozens of people, supplies, and livestock. Modern replicas have sailed from Tahiti to California using only stars, swell patterns, and bird flight paths for navigation, proving the voyage was possible. Indigenous Mapuche oral histories in Chile even speak of bearded strangers arriving by sea long before the Spanish, offering descriptions that match Polynesian tattoos and woven armor. What does this mean for history? For starters, it shatters the old myth that the Americas were isolated before 1492. If Polynesians reached South America, they might have brought back more than just sweet potatoes. Some researchers speculate ideas like pyramid construction or certain art styles could have flowed both ways. But the real lesson lies in the Polynesians themselves. Without compasses or maps, they conquered the Pacific not by accident, but by skill. Their voyages remind us that history's greatest journeys often leave the faintest traces, a chicken bone here, a crop there, waiting for us to piece together an epic that once spanned half the globe. In the arid deserts of China's Tarim Basin, a discovery sent shockwaves through the archaeological world: perfectly preserved mummies with striking European features, buried thousands of years before Silk Road caravans traversed Asia. These weren't just any ancient remains. Their flowing auburn hair, felted wool garments, and distinctly Caucasian bone structure defied every expectation about who lived in this region 4,000 years ago. But the real bombshell came when genetic testing revealed something even more unexpected: traces of ancestry linking them not just to Europe but to the ancient Americas. How did people with American DNA end up in the heart of Asia, and what does this mean for our understanding of prehistoric migration? The Tarim mummies, unearthed near the Taklamakan Desert, look like they could have walked straight out of a Celtic village. One famously dubbed the Beauty of Llullaillaco wears a felt hat and leather boots, her delicate features frozen in time. Nearby, a man with a reddish-brown beard lies beside a baby wrapped in a wool blanket dyed blue and red, textiles woven with techniques identical to those found in ancient Europe. Initially, scholars assumed these were lost travelers from the West, perhaps early Indo-Europeans who strayed too far east, but then science intervened. DNA analysis painted a far more complex picture. While some mummies carried markers linking them to the Afanasevo culture of Siberia, a group descended from Yamnaya herders of the Eurasian steppe, others showed genetic signatures eerily similar to indigenous populations of the Americas. This wasn't a fluke. The same ancestral lineages found in modern Native Americans, known as haplogroup Q, appeared in the Tarim Basin millennia before Columbus. The implications are staggering. Either a branch of ancient Siberians migrated both east into the Americas and west into China, or an unknown back migration brought American-related genes across the Bering Land Bridge in reverse. The artifacts buried with the mummies deepen the intrigue. Bronze tools mirror those of the Andronovo culture to the north, while their cemeteries, wooden boats turned upside down like capsized vessels, echo burial practices from Scandinavia to the Pacific Northwest. Even their cheese, the world's oldest surviving dairy product, matches fermentation techniques used by early steppe nomads. Yet their language, glimpsed through rare inscriptions, remains undeciphered, a linguistic ghost whispering of connections we can't yet fully trace. Could these mummies be evidence of a forgotten Bronze Age superhighway, where ideas, people, and genes flowed across continents long before history books recorded such journeys? Some theorists speculate they were part of a proto-Silk Road, trading goods and genes between East and West. Others propose they're remnants of the Tocharian people, an enigmatic Caucasian culture later absorbed by Turkic and Mongolian groups. But the American link raises a tantalizing possibility that the story of human migration is far messier, far more interconnected than we ever imagined. What makes the Tarim mummies so revolutionary isn't just their existence, it's their defiance of borders, both ancient and modern. They force us to rethink not just who lived where, but how fluid identity was in a world without maps or nations. In their preserved faces, we see a truth that unsettles and excites, that continents were never truly separate, only waiting for footsteps to bridge them. In a dusty Peruvian town near the Nazca Lines, a collection of engraved stones has ignited one of archaeology's most heated debates. The Inca stones, some small enough to fit in your palm, others weighing over 50 pounds, are etched with scenes that seem to defy history itself. Humans battling dinosaur-like creatures, surgeons performing organ transplants, even telescopes trained on distant stars. If genuine, these carvings would rewrite our understanding of ancient knowledge. But are they relics of a lost civilization or an elaborate hoax designed to thrill and deceive? The controversy began in the 1960s when a local farmer named Basilio Ashuya claimed to have discovered thousands of these stones in nearby caves. The most shocking depicted humans interacting with creatures resembling triceratops and stegosaurs, an impossibility according to mainstream science, since dinosaurs died out 65 million years before humans existed. Other stones showed complex medical procedures, maps of unknown continents, and advanced machinery that wouldn't be invented for centuries. Swiss author Erich von Däniken seized on them as proof of ancient astronauts, while mainstream archaeologists dismissed the entire collection as a clever forgery. So where's the truth? Start with the stones themselves. Geologists confirm they're made of andesite, a volcanic rock common to the region, with patina, a natural weathering layer, covering both the stone's surface and the carvings. This suggests some engravings could indeed be centuries old. But here's the catch: patina can be faked with acid or simple aging techniques, and Ushuaia later admitted under oath that he'd carved many himself using dental tools. Yet even his confession left wiggle room. He claimed he'd copied older stones found in the area, raising the possibility that some might be authentic. Then there's the artwork. While dinosaurs steal the headlines, the stone's artistic style is curiously inconsistent. Some carvings show crude, childlike figures, while others display anatomical precision worthy of a Renaissance sketchbook. Skeptics argue this points to multiple hands at work, likely local artisans catering to a burgeoning market for ancient curios. But proponents counter that similar discrepancies exist in genuine pre-Columbian art, where skill levels varied widely. The most compelling clue might come from an unexpected source: Inca oral history. Spanish chroniclers recorded indigenous legends of giant lizards that roamed the land before humans, possibly describing fossil discoveries misinterpreted as living creatures. Could the Ica stones be a much later attempt to preserve these stories in stone? Or did an earlier civilization, perhaps one we've yet to uncover, possess knowledge far beyond what we've credited them with? Science may never settle the debate conclusively, but the Ica stones serve a deeper purpose. They force us to question how easily we dismiss the improbable and why we're so quick to label anomalies as hoaxes. Whether ancient artifact or modern mischief, these stones remind us that history is rarely as tidy as textbooks suggest, and sometimes the most fascinating mysteries aren't about what's real, but what they reveal about our thirst for the unexplained. Stretching over 1,300 feet along a quiet ridge in southern Ohio, the Great Serpent Mound coils through the landscape like a snake frozen mid-strike, its massive earthen body undulating in 7 graceful curves before spiraling into a tail that some say represents an egg, a frog, or perhaps even the cosmos itself. This isn't just a mound, it's the largest serpent effigy on Earth, built with such precision that its curves align with celestial events we're only now beginning to understand. But who crafted this grassy giant, and what message were they trying to send across the centuries? For generations, scholars assumed the serpent was the work of the Adena people, who inhabited the region around 2,000 years ago. Their burial mounds dot the Ohio Valley, and the serpent's proximity to Adena sites seemed to seal the case. But recent radiocarbon dating upended that theory. Charcoal samples from the mound's base suggest it was built later, possibly by the fort ancient culture around 900 years ago, a people with no known tradition of serpent symbolism. This leaves us with a jarring question. Why would a culture abandon their own artistic traditions to resurrect imagery from a civilization that had vanished centuries earlier? The serpent's celestial connections deepen the intrigue. Its head aligns perfectly with the summer solstice sunset, while the coils may track the lunar standstill, a rare event where the moon pauses at its northernmost point in the sky, occurring only every 18.6 years. Even more striking, some researchers note the serpent's curves mirror the shape of the Little Dipper, with the tail coiled around Polaris, the North Star. Was this a colossal astronomical calendar, a way to mark sacred times without written records, or something more profound? A bridge between earth and sky where the serpent symbolized the Milky Way's undulating path across the heavens. Then there's the spiritual angle. Across indigenous cultures of the Americas, serpents often represented transformation, shedding skin to symbolize rebirth, or bridging realms as creatures of both water and land. The Hopewell people, contemporaries of the Adena, buried serpentine tablets with their dead, suggesting the snake was a guide to the afterlife. Could the mound be a three-dimensional prayer, a plea for safe passage between worlds? Some Cherokee and Shawnee oral traditions describe serpent spirits guarding sacred knowledge, hinting that the mound's builders might have shared these beliefs. But the most haunting theory comes from the mound's geology. Beneath the serpent lies a meteorite impact crater, its bedrock fractured in ways that could have released gases causing visions or altered states. Did ancient peoples interpret this as a sign, a place where the earth itself whispered through the serpent's form? Modern visitors often report strange magnetic anomalies near the mound, adding fuel to the idea that this site was chosen not just for its views, but for something invisible, something felt. The Great Serpent Mound refuses to be pinned down. It's an astronomical marker, a spiritual beacon, and a cultural palindrome, a message that changes meaning depending on who's reading it. Perhaps that's the point. In a world where we demand clear answers, the serpent slithers just beyond our grasp, reminding us that some ancient wonders weren't meant to be solved but experienced. As the grass sways over its curves, you can almost hear the land whispering, "Not every mystery needs an ending. Sometimes the question itself is the gift." Centuries after the Maya's golden age, a new name echoed through Mesoamerica: the Toltecs. Described as fierce warrior artists who built the legendary city of Cholula, they were said to have conquered distant lands, spreading their influence as far as Yucatan's Maya cities. But here's the catch: no one can agree if the Toltecs were real conquerors, a political myth, or something in between. Did a powerful empire truly shape the post-classic Maya world, or did later civilizations invent them as a kind of ancient propaganda? The debate begins with Cholula itself. Nestled in central Mexico, its ruins feature imposing Atlantean warrior statues and colonnaded halls that eerily resemble Chichen Itza's architecture 1,000 miles away. Both cities share nearly identical feathered serpent motifs, ball courts aligned to celestial events, and even carvings of jaguars devouring hearts. To early archaeologists, this was smoking proof. The Toltecs must have invaded the Maya, bringing their artistic and religious styles with them. But skeptics point to radiocarbon dates telling a messier story. Some structures in Chichen Itza appear older than their Cholula counterparts, flipping the script. Could the influence have flowed the other way? Then there's the problem of the Toltecs' own origins. Aztec chronicles, written centuries later, describe them as godlike founders of civilization, artisans who taught metalworking, astronomy, and statecraft. But dig into Cholula's layers and you won't find evidence of a vast empire. Instead, there are signs of a modest city-state that thrived between 900 and 1200 AD, its reach possibly exaggerated by later rulers hungry for prestigious ancestry. The Aztecs, after all, claimed descent from the Toltecs, much like European kings traced their lineage to Trojan heroes. The Maya connection gets even thornier. At Chichen Itza, inscriptions mention a mysterious figure named Cayacolcan, a feathered serpent deity suspiciously similar to the Toltec god Quetzalcoatl. Some carvings show Maya elites dressed in Toltec-style garb, while others depict battles against foreign warriors. But are these records of actual conquest or clever political theater? One theory suggests Chichen Itza's rulers adopted Toltec imagery to legitimize their power, much like Roman emperors borrowed Greek mythology. After all, associating yourself with a legendary culture beats explaining why your palace taxes are so high. What's undeniable is the Toltec psychological grip on later societies. Whether real or imagined, they became the gold standard of Mesoamerican prestige. The Aztecs collected Toltec antiques, many likely fakes, while Maya scribes centuries after Cholula's fall still wrote of Toltec wisdom. Maybe that's their true legacy, not an empire of stone, but an idea so potent it shaped history long after its architects vanished. In the end, the Toltecs teach us a provocative lesson. Sometimes what civilizations believe about their past matters just as much as what actually happened. High amid the sandstone cliffs of the American Southwest, the ancestral Pueblones, often called the Anasazi, built entire cities tucked into rock faces, their homes seemingly glued to the canyon walls. Places like Mesa Verde's Cliff Palace aren't just ruins, they're architectural feats with over 150 rooms and 23 kivas, ceremonial chambers carved into the rock, accessible only by perilous hand and toe trails. But around the late 1300s, these thriving communities emptied out. Food stores were left behind, doors were sealed shut from the inside, and ladders were pulled up as if the people simply walked away into the desert. What could have driven a civilization to abandon their homes so completely, leaving only cryptic petroglyphs as their farewell letter? Theories about their disappearance read like a checklist of apocalyptic scenarios. Tree rings from the period reveal a decades-long megadrought, one of the worst in the region's history, a death sentence for a culture dependent on maize, beans, and squash. But drought alone doesn't explain the eerie precision of their exodus. Archaeological digs uncover signs of social unraveling, defensive walls built around once open villages, skeletons with signs of violence, even evidence of cannibalism in some sites. Some researchers believe internal strife fractured the society, with religious or political conflicts turning neighbors against each other. Others point to external threats like raids from nomadic groups, though no clear enemy has ever been identified. Then there's the spiritual angle. The ancestral Pueblones left behind thousands of petroglyphs, rock carvings depicting everything from bighorn sheep to humanoid figures with hollow eyes, known as shamans or star people. Some panels show spirals and concentric circles that align with solstice sunbeams, suggesting a deep connection to celestial cycles. Could their departure have been a pilgrimage, a mass migration toward some promised land hinted at in their cosmology? Modern Pueblo tribes like the Hopi and Zuni, who trace their ancestry to these cliff dwellers, speak of a great emergence, a belief that their people cyclically move from one world to the next when the old one becomes unbalanced. The most haunting clue might be what they didn't take. At many sites, storage rooms remained packed with corn, pottery still sat on shelves, and precious turquoise jewelry lay untouched. This wasn't a panicked flight, it was deliberate, almost ritualistic. Some archaeologists speculate they practiced a form of termination rituals, ceremonially closing homes to release their spiritual energy. Others wonder if environmental collapse triggered a cultural taboo, that staying would have violated sacred laws. What lingers isn't just the mystery of their disappearance, but the eerie resonance of their story. In an age of climate crises and societal fractures, the ancestral Pueblones feel less like ancient history and more like a mirror. Their cliff dwellings still stand, silent and stubborn, as if waiting for us to understand the lesson carved into their walls. Civilizations don't always end with a bang. Sometimes they choose to walk away, leaving only whispers in the wind and footprints in the dust. Deep in the Chihuahuan desert, where the sun scorches the earth and the wind howls across endless stretches of sand, lies a patch of land so unnerving, locals call it the Zone of Silence. The Mapimi Silent Zone isn't just remote, it's broken. Radios crackle and die without warning, compasses spin wildly, and even satellite signals falter as if something in the ground itself is swallowing technology whole. But the strangest part, this isn't some modern mystery. For centuries, people have reported bizarre phenomena. Here, meteorites raining down with uncanny precision, floating orbs of light that dart between cactus spines, and artifacts that look anything but human-made. The phenomenon first grabbed international attention in 1970 when a U.S. Athena missile test veered wildly off course and crashed here, as if the desert itself reached up and grabbed it. When recovery teams arrived, their equipment malfunctioned so badly they had to mark the site with simple wooden posts. Technology, it seemed, wasn't welcome. Stories multiplied. Shepherds told of hot rains that burned skin but left no marks. Scientists claimed their watches stopped simultaneously at random intervals, and visitors swore they heard whispers on the wind in no known language. Then came the artifacts. Scattered through the zone are strange, glass-like fragments that local researchers call aeroliths, objects with metallic properties but no known earthly composition. Some are etched with geometric patterns too precise to be natural, while others contain microscopic tunnels that resemble circuitry, the wildest theory. That these are remnants of an ancient, advanced civilization, or something not of this world. Skeptics argue the zone sits atop massive magnetic mineral deposits, creating natural interference. Others note it aligns with a hotspot where meteorites frequently strike, suggesting cosmic forces at play. But the most chilling detail might be the zone's eerie similarity to other, vile vortices around the globe, places like the Bermuda Triangle and the Dragon's Triangle near Japan, where electromagnetic chaos reigns. Some researchers propose these sites sit at intersecting ley lines, creating pockets where the Earth's energy field goes haywire. Indigenous oral traditions add another layer. The Comanche and Tarahumara people have long avoided this area, calling it the Devil's Playground, a place where the boundary between worlds grows thin. What makes the silent zone so magnetic both literally and figuratively isn't just the phenomena, but the questions it forces us to confront. Is this a rare geological fluke, a cosmic bullseye, or something science can't yet explain? Even NASA took notice, briefly considering the area for testing Mars rovers due to its otherworldly conditions. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, one thing's certain. In a world where we've mapped every inch of the planet, the zone of silence remains a stubborn blank spot, a place where the rules refuse to apply and the desert keeps its secrets close. Hidden in the vaults of the Vatican Library lies a book so visually stunning, so dense with symbolism, that scholars have spent centuries trying to crack its secrets. The Codex Borgia, a 15th century Aztec manuscript painted on deerskin, isn't just a relic. It's a kaleidoscope of gods, calendars, and what some believe are eerily accurate prophecies of doom. Flip through its vividly colored pages, and you'll encounter serpents entwined with bleeding hearts, deities wielding celestial weapons, and scenes that seem to depict earthquakes, invasions, and a world turned upside down. But here's the spine-tingling question. Did this sacred text predict the cataclysmic arrival of the Spanish before their sails even appeared on the horizon? Start with the imagery. One haunting section shows Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, locked in battle with Tezcatlipoca, the god of darkness. Their struggle plays out across a cosmic grid, with temples crumbling and flames consuming cities. To the Aztecs, this wasn't just mythology, it was cyclical history, a prophecy that every era ended in destruction before rebirth. Yet the details are uncanny. Spanish chroniclers later described Montezuma Roman II terror when he received reports of towers floating on the water, ships that matched descriptions of mythical weapons from the Codex. Even stranger, some pages depict figures with pale skin and beards, their helmets resembling conquistador armor centuries before Europeans arrived. Then there's the timing. The Codex was created around the 1400s, just decades before Cortés landed in 1519. Its Tonalpohualli, the sacred 260-day calendar, marks certain dates with ominous symbols. One panel highlights a year sign known as One Reed, the same year Quetzalcoatl was prophesied to return from the east, and guess what? Cortés arrived on One Reed. Coincidence, or had the Aztecs seen their fate written in the stars? Skeptics argue these predictions are retroactive readings, that the Codex simply encoded Aztec beliefs about cyclical collapse, not specific events. But other clues defy easy dismissal. Pages 56 to 58 depict a procession of warriors carrying banners eerily similar to Spanish crosses, marching toward a temple under a sky streaked with what could be gunfire. Another section shows a great flood swallowing figures in foreign garb, a possible nod to the smallpox epidemics that decimated indigenous populations. The most compelling theory isn't about clairvoyance but pattern recognition. The Aztecs, like many Mesoamerican cultures, believed history repeated itself in gruesome cycles. The Codex might not have predicted Spain's arrival so much as anticipated collapse in general, a warning that no empire lasts forever. Modern scholars now see it less as a prophecy and more as a mirror, reflecting humanity's timeless dance with power and ruin. Yet the Codex guards one final secret. Buried in its complex astrological charts is a sequence that some interpret as a countdown not to the Spanish conquest, but to another cataclysm yet to come. Whether you see it as divine foresight or psychological reckoning, the Borgia's pages pulse with urgency, as if their painters knew someday someone would stare into their vivid hues and see not just the past but a warning for the ages. Deep beneath the temple of the inscriptions in Palenque, a sarcophagus lid carved with what looks like an ancient astronaut sparked one of archaeology's wildest controversies. The tomb belonged to Kayinish-Janob Pakal, a 7th century Maya king whose burial chamber took 3 years to uncover, not because of its depth but because of the chilling series of accidents that befell the team who dared disturb it. When archaeologists finally pried open the vault in 1952, they found more than bones. They discovered an intricate carving that some claim depicts Pakal piloting a spaceship, his hands on controls, his body reclined as if blasting off toward the stars. But is this really proof of ancient alien contact, or a masterpiece of spiritual symbolism misunderstood by modern eyes? The so-called spaceship image is undeniably striking. Pakal leans backward, surrounded by what could be flames or celestial bands, his gaze fixed upward while what looks like a complex machine frames his body. Proponents of ancient astronaut theories like Erich von Däniken insisted this was clear evidence of extraterrestrial technology, a king strapped into a rocket's cockpit. But Maya scholars offer a different reading. The machine closely resembles the world tree, a sacred axis linking the underworld, earth, and heavens in Maya cosmology. The flames might be stylized serpent heads, representing the path souls took to the afterlife, while Pakal's pose mirrors depictions of rulers being reborn from the underworld's maw. Even the controls beneath his fingers resemble traditional Maya glyphs for portals between worlds. Then there's the curse. Of the 5 archaeologists present at the tomb's opening, 4 met untimely death shortly after, succumbing to illness, accidents, and even suicide under bizarre circumstances. The lone survivor, Alberto Roslulia, spent years battling unexplained health issues. Locals whispered that Pakal's spirit punished those who trespassed in his eternal rest, a belief fueled by Maya inscriptions warning against disturbing sacred tombs. Skeptics point to coincidence. Jungle expeditions carried real risks, from tropical diseases to treacherous terrain, but the pattern feels uncanny. Even today, some conservators working with Pakal's jade death mask report strange visions or sudden fevers. The tomb's true genius lies in its engineering. The sarcophagus weighs 20 tons, yet the Maya lowered it into the pyramid's heart before sealing the chamber with a secret staircase, an architectural puzzle that took modern teams decades to solve. Pakal's burial was no hasty affair. Every detail, from the jade-inlaid corpse to the walls painted with his ancestral line, was designed to ensure his apotheosis. The spaceship carving might not depict interstellar travel, but it does capture a civilization's belief in cosmic journeying, where death wasn't an end but a launch into the stars. Perhaps the real curse isn't supernatural but intellectual. Pakal's tomb forces us to confront how quickly we project our modern fantasies onto ancient art. In our eagerness to see rockets, we risk missing the deeper wonder. A people who envisioned their kings not as mortals, but as navigators of the universe's grandest mysteries. Whether you see an astronaut or an ancestor ascending to the gods, one thing's certain: this slab of stone still holds power not to kill, but to make us question what we think we know. High in the mist-shrouded mountains of northern Peru, where the Andes collide with the Amazon, an ancient people carved their cities into cliffs so steep they seem to float above the clouds. The Chachapoya, known as the warriors of the clouds, weren't just skilled fighters, they were masters of vertical living, constructing fortresses like Culap with walls 60 feet tall, their round stone houses clinging to ridges like eagles' nests. But what truly sets them apart isn't just their architecture, it's their defiance. When the mighty Inca Empire came knocking, the Chachapoya didn't submit. They fought back with a ferocity that still echoes in their bones. Start with the skulls. In the caves of Laguna de los Condors, archaeologists found hundreds of Chachapoya mummies, many deliberately placed in baskets and arranged in postures of watchful resistance. These weren't typical burials. Some skulls bore brutal fractures, others showed signs of healing from earlier battles, and a few even had teeth filed into points, a possible ritual modification to terrify enemies. The message was clear: these people lived and died as warriors. Even their textiles tell a story of rebellion. Unlike the geometric patterns favored by the Inca, Chachapoya weavers created vivid depictions of fanged faces and serpents, as if wearing their defiance on their cloaks. Then there's the war itself. Inca records describe the Chachapoya as exceptionally tough adversaries, so much so that after finally conquering them in the late 1500s, the empire forcibly relocated thousands to break their spirit. But the Cloud Warriors refused to vanish. Spanish chronicles note their ongoing uprisings, including a famous revolt where they teamed up with Inca rebels against their common enemy, the conquistadors. Even in defeat, their legends endured. Local lore still speaks of their shamans transforming into jaguars to stalk invaders under cover of fog. Perhaps most striking is the mystery of their origins. Genetic studies reveal the Chachapoya were biologically distinct from both the Inca and Amazonian tribes, with some lineages tracing back to ancient migrations we're only beginning to understand. Their language, now lost, left traces in place names like Chachapoyas, while their art shows influences from distant cultures, stylized figures resembling those found in Colombia's San Agustin or even Central America. Were they a melting pot of refugees who found unity in the clouds, a remnant of some older civilization the Inca couldn't fully absorb? The truth may lie in their landscape. To stand atop Culap's walls is to understand their strategy. Visibility for miles, sheer drops on all sides, and rolling banks of mist that could swallow an army whole. The Chachapoya didn't just adapt to the clouds, they weaponized them. In the end, their greatest legacy isn't just their resistance, but their refusal to be defined by the empires that sought to erase them. Their bones whisper a truth as piercing as their spears. Some spirits can't be conquered, only temporarily hidden in the fog. Rising over 12 feet tall in the windswept highlands of Bolivia, the Gate of the Sun stands as one of the Andes' most enigmatic masterpieces. Carved from a single block of andesite weighing nearly 10 tons, this massive archway is adorned with intricate reliefs that have baffled scholars for centuries. At its center, a deity known as the staff god stares outward, flanked by rows of winged attendants frozen mid-stride. But the real mystery lies in the intricate symbols surrounding them, a complex web of lines, dots, and geometric shapes that some believe encode an ancient calendar, while others insist they're blueprints for something far more extraordinary. Let's start with the calendar theory. The gate's carvings appear to chart celestial cycles with uncanny precision. Researchers note that certain markings align with solstices and equinoxes, while others may track Venus's movements, a planet sacred to many Andean cultures. The most compelling detail: when sunlight strikes the gate at dawn on the winter solstice, shadows align perfectly with grooves that could function as a giant sundial. But here's the catch: if this is a calendar, it's based on a year of 290 days, not the 365 we use today. Some propose this reflects an earlier, forgotten timekeeping system, while skeptics argue the carvings are purely decorative. Then there's the portal hypothesis. Local Aymara legends describe the gate as Puerta de Teotihuacan, a doorway to other realms used by gods in primordial times. Spanish chroniclers recorded indigenous accounts of people vanishing through it, lured by visions of a shining city. Modern visitors often report strange sensations near the arch, sudden temperature drops, whispers on the wind, even fleeting glimpses of figures in the periphery. Geophysicists have detected odd magnetic anomalies around the site, though whether these are natural or something else remains unclear. Could the gate symbolize a spiritual threshold, or was it believed to be a literal passageway? The wildest theories revolve around the so-called staff god. With his rectangular eyes and radiating headdress, this figure bears a striking resemblance to carvings found as far away as Easter Island and Mesopotamia. Ancient astronaut enthusiasts argue his pose holding rod-like objects that emit energy lines suggests advanced technology. Mainstream archaeologists counter that these are ceremonial staffs, symbols of divine authority. But one detail defies easy explanation: the gate's precise angles and smooth surfaces achieved without metal tools. The andesite used is notoriously hard, yet the carvings show no chisel marks, just polished grooves as if the stone was softened like butter. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the gate's current state. It's not standing in its original location. When Europeans first documented it in the mid-1800s, the gate lay toppled amid the ruins of Teotihuacan, a city already ancient when the Inca rose to power. The civilization that built it left no written records, only this silent sentinel. Was it the centerpiece of a grand temple, a landmark for cosmic events? Or a relic of a lost golden age, its true purpose as forgotten as the hands that shaped it? The gate doesn't yield answers easily. It simply stands, or rather leans, as a testament to the enduring human desire to reach beyond what we know, whether toward the stars, the divine, or the depths of our own imagination. Carved into the stone slabs of Monte Albán's ancient plaza, the danzantes stare back with twisted limbs and gaping mouths, figures frozen in motion, their bodies caught between agony and ecstasy. These aren't just ordinary statues, they're some of Mesoamerica's most enigmatic art, dating back over 2,000 years to the Zapotec civilization's golden age. Some appear to dance, their arms flung wide as if caught mid-ritual. Others contort in poses that suggest torture, their spines arched unnaturally, their faces locked in silent screams. So which is it? Were these images meant to honor sacred performers, or were they warnings carved in stone, proof of the Zapotec's darker side? The dance theory has its merits. Many danzantes figures wear elaborate headdresses and ornate belts, their bodies adorned with symbols linked to fertility and rain. Their dynamic poses mirror those of ceremonial dancers documented in later Mesoamerican cultures, like the Aztecs' voladores who spun from ropes to honor the gods. Some scholars point to their placement clustered near temples and ball courts, as evidence they celebrated ritual athletes or shamanic trance dancers bridging earth and sky. Even their name, danzantes, Spanish for dancers, reflects early Spanish interpretations of their fluid, almost rhythmic postures. But then there's the blood. Close inspection reveals some figures have glyphs carved into their thighs or torsos, symbols often interpreted as names of conquered rivals. A few slabs show figures with closed eyes and slack jaws, their limbs splayed like prisoners dropped from a great height. Forensic archaeologists note that certain contortions mirror real trauma, dislocated joints, broken necks, suggesting these might be portraits of sacrificed war captives, their final moments immortalized as trophies. The Zapotec were fierce expansionists, and Monte Albán's rise coincided with the subjugation of neighboring valleys. Could these carvings be a brutal political billboard boasting of military might? The truth might lie somewhere in between. modern indigenous Mixtec and Zapotec communities still perform dances where participants embody ancestors or deities, their movements deliberately exaggerated to channel spiritual energy. Perhaps the danzantes depict neither pure celebration nor pure violence, but a sacred transformation, captives becoming conduits for divine power, their suffering sanctified as part of a greater cosmic exchange. One detail complicates every theory: the figure's genitalia. Many are conspicuously exposed or emphasized, a trait rarely seen in Mesoamerican depictions of prisoners. If these were tortured enemies, why highlight their virility? Some researchers propose the danzantes represent a ritual akin to the Maya's ballgame, where captives faced ordeal or execution in ceremonies tied to rebirth. Others see echoes of creation myths, where contortion symbolizes the pain of divine birth. The stones won't give up their secrets easily. Unlike the Maya, the Zapotec left no surviving codices to explain their art. All we have are these silent figures, their bodies a language we're still learning to read. Whether dancers, prisoners, or something more profound, the danzantes remind us that ancient art rarely fits neat categories. Sometimes the most powerful messages are the ones that leave us unsettled, hovering between horror and reverence, just like those twisted stone limbs frozen in time. Golden goblets overflowed with sacrificial blood in the Machu world, their ceramic surfaces painted with scenes so visceral they make modern viewers flinch. Deities with crescent blades severing human necks, warriors presenting dripping heads to grinning gods, priests drinking from cups shaped like screaming faces. This wasn't just art, it was a visual liturgy of violence repeated on pottery, murals, and temple walls across northern Peru's arid coast. But were these nightmarish images symbolic mythology, or did the Machu truly stage rituals as brutal as their artwork suggests? The answer lies in a grisly archaeological discovery that blurred the line between sacred storytelling and cold, clinical fact. Start with the art itself. The Machus decapitate a god, often depicted as a half-human, half-jaguar figure wielding a crescent-shaped Tumi knife, appears everywhere, from ceremonial drinking vessels to the murals of the Huaca de la Luna temple. His victims aren't anonymous, their faces contort in agony, their hands bound with ropes, their blood depicted as serpentine streams flowing toward deities. At first glance, these could be allegories, myths about cosmic balance, like the Aztecs' belief that sacrifices kept the sun moving. But then archaeologists unearthed Plaza 3A at Huaca de la Luna, and the debate turned to dust. Beneath the temple's vivid murals, they found skeletons, dozens of them, male, mostly young, their vertebrae showing precise cut marks consistent with ritual decapitation. Worse still, their bones bore signs of prolonged torture, broken ribs healed unevenly, fractures suggesting repeated blunt force trauma before death. Chemical analysis revealed traces of ayahuasca in their systems, hinting they'd been drugged before their final moments. These weren't battle casualties, they were offerings killed methodically in ceremonies that mirrored the artwork with unsettling accuracy. Yet the mystery deepens when you examine who these victims were. Isotope testing suggests many weren't locals but came from distant valleys, possibly captured in raids. Their teeth showed signs of childhood malnutrition, unlike the well-fed Machu elite, implying they were lower status. But here's the twist: some wore elaborate jewelry at death, their bodies carefully arranged in patterns aligning with lunar phases. This wasn't mere slaughter, it was theater, a gruesome performance where victims might have been groomed for months as living embodiments of mythical antagonists. The most chilling clue, the Machu's own fate. Around 800 AD, their civilization collapsed amid catastrophic El Niño floods, events their artwork had eerily foreshadowed. Murals at Huaca de la Luna show decapitators amid torrential rains, as if the gods themselves were drowning the world. Did the Machu escalate sacrifices to appease angry deities, or were their rituals a desperate attempt to control forces beyond human understanding? modern Peruvians still whisper of Pistocos, mythical killers said to harvest fat from victims, a folk memory perhaps of those blood-soaked plazas. What lingers isn't just the brutality, but the intimacy of it. The Moch didn't hide their violence, they celebrated it in radiant polychrome, turning terror into beauty. Their art forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth, that for some ancient cultures, sanctity and savagery weren't opposites, but two sides of the same golden coin. The decapitator god still grins from museum cases, his blade forever poised, a reminder that some mysteries aren't about what happened, but why we're so unsettled by truths we can no longer reconcile. 13,000 years ago, as the last ice age loosened its grip on North America, a culture emerged with tools so advanced they might as well have been the smartphones of the Stone Age. The Clovis people, named for the distinctive fluted spear points first discovered in New Mexico, left behind traces of their existence from coast to coast, hundreds of sites where these deadly, elegant projectiles lay beside the bones of mammoths, mastodons, and other megafauna. Then, around 12,800 years ago, their artifacts abruptly vanish from the archaeological record. No gradual decline, no evolutionary transition, just silence in the soil. What could have erased an entire way of life so completely, and did any of them survive to pass on their legacy? Theories about their disappearance read like a catalogue of prehistoric catastrophes. One leading suspect, climate chaos triggered by the Younger Dryas event, a sudden plunge back into glacial conditions that lasted over 1,000 years. Pollen samples from this period show forests giving way to tundra almost overnight, while lakebed sediments reveal layers of charcoal, evidence of continent-spanning wildfires. For a culture that relied on hunting massive game, this would have been apocalyptic. Imagine tracking mammoths across grasslands that suddenly turned to frozen deserts, your finely crafted spear points useless against the vanishing herds. Some researchers even propose a cosmic culprit. Nanodiamonds and platinum spikes in soil layers suggest a possible comet impact or airburst that blackened skies and shattered ecosystems. But here's where it gets complicated. The Clovis people weren't just victims of circumstance, they might have been agents of their own downfall. The overkill hypothesis argues that their hunting efficiency became a curse, spearing so many mammoths and mastodons that they triggered an ecological collapse. At multiple Clovis sites like Texas's Galt locality, spear points mingle with the bones of dozens of slaughtered juveniles, suggesting indiscriminate hunting that prevented herds from replenishing. Yet critics counter that climate change would have stressed these animals regardless, and that human populations were too sparse to deliver a death blow. The most tantalizing question isn't just why they vanished, but whether they truly did. Some archaeologists point to post-Clovis cultures like the Folsom tradition as their spiritual successors, adapting thinner, more efficient points for smaller game like bison as the megafauna died out. Genetic studies add fuel to the debate. Modern indigenous groups from the Anzac Child, a Clovis-era burial in Montana, show clear ancestral ties to living native populations. This suggests cultural dispersion rather than extinction, with Clovis groups fracturing into smaller, more mobile bands whose tools evolved with their changing world. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies not in stone or bone, but in stories. The oral traditions of some plains tribes describe a time when the great animals grew scarce, forcing hunters to reinvent themselves. Could these be distant memories of the Clovis transition? Without written records, we're left reading between the lines of archaeology and tradition, piecing together a puzzle where even the edges are blurred. The Clovis didn't just leave behind spear points, they left us with a riddle about resilience, reminding us that disappearance isn't always extinction. Sometimes it's just transformation written in whispers across millennia. From the Nazca Lines' skyward whispers to the silent defiance of the Cloud Warriors, from Cahokia's sudden vanishing act to the Tolan's blurred line between myth and history, these 25 mysteries are just the beginning. Think about it, we've decoded celestial calendars etched in stone, yet we still don't know who first charted the stars over Teotihuacan. We've reconstructed bloody sacrifices from bone and pigment, but the true purpose of the Great Serpent Mound slithers just out of reach. Every answer we uncover, like the Polynesians' fearless voyages or the Tarim mummies' transcontinental ties, only reveals deeper layers of questions waiting beneath. And that's the thrill, isn't it? The ancient Americas weren't just a stage for lost civilizations. They were a canvas where cultures painted their dreams, fears, and secrets in materials that outlasted empires. These aren't static relics behind museum glass, they're conversations. The Olmec heads still challenge us to name them. The Mocha's golden goblets dare us to understand their sacred violence. Chichen Itza's echoing pyramids ask if we've truly listened. Here's what keeps archaeologists and all of us coming back. For every site we've mapped, there are dozens swallowed by jungles, deserts, or time itself. LiDAR technology peels back the Amazon's canopy to reveal grids of undiscovered cities. Fishermen still dredge up artifacts from coastal waters where ancient shores once lay. And somewhere, perhaps buried under a farmer's field or a bustling modern plaza, the next great revelation waits. So what's your theory? Did the Clovis people sail into obscurity, or did they adapt and walk among their descendants? Is Paititi still hidden in the Amazon's green shadows, or was it never a place at all but a state of mind? Drop your wildest ideas in the comments, because history isn't just written by the experts. It's a puzzle we're all piecing together, one enigma at a time. If these mysteries lit a fire in your curiosity, consider subscribing. We're just scratching the surface, literally. From submerged Mayan caves to the untranslated scripts of the Zapotec, there are worlds of wonder left to explore. And remember, the next great discovery might not come from a trowel or a textbook, but from someone like you, looking at the past with fresh eyes and asking, what if? Until then, keep wondering. The ancients left clues everywhere, not just in stone and soil, but in the stories we've yet to tell.